right, we're back with Doug from the group Rubicon. How are you today, Doug?
I'm good, Jay. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. Loving this new album. So you guys are based where? In Northern California?
No, we're in Boston, actually.
You're in Boston. Okay.
We're in Boston.
Somehow you know what it is? I got you guys completely screwed up with the Rubicon from the 70s. You remember that band?
We certainly do.
There you go.
Yeah, we were recording an album in '02, I think, and uncovered their that supergroup. I think it was Styx and Night Ranger.
Yeah, Jack Blades was in the group and the whole deal.
That's right. Yeah, they were Northern California. We are the Boston group.
There you go.
K.
It's Boston all the way. Can't confuse that.
Yeah.
So now, give us a little bit of background. Now, when you came up in music, at what age did you start playing, and who were some of your musical heroes that influenced you to do so?
Oh, great question. So I am the drummer. I came up. I played trumpet first. So as an early music.
So yeah, just to pick up where you started on that question. You know, your when you got involved in music and your heroes.
Great. So I got involved early on in music. I was about 6 when I started playing trumpet. But I'm the drummer in the band. So originally as a trumpeter, I looked up to like Wynton Marsalis and guys like that, more on the jazz side. But then when I started playing drums, Neil Peart was the reason I started playing drums. I heard the live version of YYZ and thought, how on earth can somebody make so much wonderful noise with just 4 limbs? Did a little research on who Neil Peart and Rush was, and I had to play drums at that point. That was about when I was 13. And then I was really big into hip-hop at the time as well. I grew up in New York.
Wow.
So combining the hip-hop with the jazz, early jazz trumpet, with Neil Peart and Rush sort of directed me. I was all over the place. I was into Metallica and Van Halen, obviously, because who wasn't in the early to mid-'80s?
Sure.
And that sort of turned into different types of hip-hop all the way up through today, where everybody in the band has such eclectic musical tastes. Anything from really heavy, Intronaut and Mastodon, through much quieter stuff like even Norah Jones and Frank Ocean, for example.
Well, a lot of people think that if you listen to softer music or other sounds, it's going to dilute your sound. But I think you guys are a testament to know that the more colors you can paint with, the more you can, express your creativity and roots you can draw from.
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree with that 100%. Growing up, one of my biggest influences was also Billy Joel. I loved Billy Joel. I still love Billy Joel. And if you break down his music or anybody that you love into the pieces and parts, you can reconstruct it and create something really lively and energetic in any medium, whether it's heavy or it's rock or it's hip hop. I think that's what the best artists out there are able to do, is not be confined to say, I'm a metal artist, so I only listen to metal music. I think the best metal out there are made up guys that listen to all different types of music so they can bring a fresh perspective to the music itself. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, very important. I mean, it's like when we fell in love with Led Zeppelin or the Stones or AC/DC or anything, one of the greatest things besides loving their music was to find out who their roots were and dig deep and see where that well was that they drew from. And you see that no creative person is an island upon themselves, but really a sum of all the parts of, what they loved and what influenced them.
Yeah, and if you're trying to do something that's current, you're already behind the 8 ball. You should always just be honest to what you're doing, whether you're being influenced, like you said, by the blues or by rock of the 70s or, there are some instances in our music where you hear Tom Petty, you hear a little bit of Steve Miller. I mean, there's some interesting aspects that we've brought into it that we didn't even realize until after we played the final track back and thought, oh my God, that sounds like Fly Like an Eagle. Where the hell did that come from? Well, it came from somewhere because as kids, everyone had that 74 to 78 Steve Miller Greatest Hits Blue album with the horse in the front. that was apparently one of the influences to one of the parts of the songs, which is
it's
fun
in
to look
your
back on.
DNA, and that's what's so great. Now, how did the band all get together? You know, what was the evolution of getting this unit in place?
So Dave and I, who's one of the guitar players, Dave and I went to college together in Boston.
Okay.
And then sorry, there's a really loud motorcycle right here. So we formed a band, an earlier version called Johnny Wishbone, and then Huey joined Johnny Wishbone, our bass player, in 98, 99, I think. And then Jay joined the band in 2001, and that's when we became Rubicon. And then from 01 to 05 or 06, we did a bunch of albums, did a bunch of touring, and then we pushed the pause button for a couple of years, and that's when Josh, the other guitar player, got involved, and that was in 2009. So it really has been, I've been playing with Dave, our guitar player, for 22 years.
Wow.
At this point. Huey, I've been playing with for 16 years. Jay for 15 years, and Josh for 7 years. So it's been, we've spent a lot of time with each other.
That's great. And what is the evolution of the name? What does Rubicon mean? You're pulling the history. It's the history question here. Question you've heard too many times.
Yeah, and I'll do my best to explain. The Rubicon is a river in Italy. When Julius Caesar was asked not to fight the Gauls, he crossed the Rubicon and did so against the wishes of the government. So by crossing the Rubicon, it was a point of irrevocable commitment for him and his army. So to cross a Rubicon in the English language means point of irrevocable commitment. So we thought at the time, 15 years ago, we were looking for a name, and actually a woman in a bar in New York suggested it to us at like 3 o'clock in the morning after a show and a bunch of beers, and it just kind of stuck.
Well, it's a great name, and now it even means something better, with the meaning behind it, because the type of commitment and dedication it takes, the perseverance to survive in this business today, is enormous. With the internet, things got a little easier to record or to email or post this or that online, but hence 5 billion other people are doing it, and we've lost so many of the platforms like MTV and so many of the retail record stores and all that. So talk a little bit about what that perseverance and dedication means, and in essence, what kind of advice do you give to those coming up today trying to follow in your steps?
Oh, great question. So we've, just in our careers, since 2001, we've seen the rise and fall of Napster, the rise and fall of MySpace, the rise and conquer of Facebook, and now Twitter and Instagram. And so that, technology has changed everything. Pro Tools, which used to be a really expensive suite of software, is now fairly inexpensive. And there are countless others that now do the same thing as Pro Tools. So what we've seen is that as technology changes, it makes it easier and easier to record, easier and easier to form a band and to promote. I think for us, and advice I would give people coming up is stay true to the music. You have to stay true to what you're trying to do. It's not about winning the lottery anymore and getting signed to a major label. I think that structure of success is behind us. It's about getting out and hitting the road and doing what you love and the art that you support and that you're excited about. Because otherwise, at the end of the day, that's all you have to answer to. Somebody else might not like it. And if you're in the business because you want to make a lot of money or you want to live a certain lifestyle, you're in the wrong business. You should be a hedge fund manager. Because
if you love what you do, love the adventure, love every step along the way. It's not about the goal line. It's about the love of the game.
That's great advice, Jay. I couldn't agree with you more. Sometimes we look back on what we accomplished in the 2000s and think, oh, we were trying to get to X. We didn't get there. But in hindsight, the journey was the goal, right? We were able to tour the country a number of times and play in front of hundreds of thousands of people. And so for us, we really feel like we were blessed to be able to have the journey. Now you look back, and now we're still doing music, we're still creating, we're still writing, we're still performing. How much luckier could you get?
Yeah, no, it shows in the new album. You guys got a great sound, and in talking about this record, I know it was produced by Marty Fredrickson, and of course he's worked with Aerosmith and Brother Kane and so many artists over the years. And you guys recorded at Quad Studios in Nashville. Talk about what Marty brought to the table and what recording in Nashville and everything helped you do with this.
Well, Nashville definitely gave us a swamp factor that, coming up from Boston to get sort of enveloped in the Nashville music scene was great. Marty has such great credentials, and his resume is so big and so expansive. Just having him in the room saying, hey, straighten this part out, or that's a good riff, why don't you double that? Little things that we wouldn't have thought of that Marty has an ear for was really, really helpful, because he is one of the best in the industry for a reason. He understands the musicians and what we're trying to accomplish. And it's almost like if someone's telling you something and they're having a hard time getting it out, and you say, oh, did you mean X? And they say, yes, that's what I meant. That's what Marty's like in the studio. We're musically trying to do X. He says, why don't you try it Y? And then the whole song is like, oh, that's what we were looking for. So he really lent that experience to us, and it was invaluable. And Nashville is just a kick-ass city if you haven't been.
Sure.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's real playing, real singing, and of course that third-party perspective that I'm sure Marty brought, that, like you say, sometimes you're so close to the music, feels good to you, but to someone who's removed or somebody who really studies that, theory of a hook or a hit or a melody can take something that's almost there and just shape it.
It's true. Or he says, he'll say, I know what you guys are trying to do here, but why don't you try it this way? Or he'd say, instead of playing electric guitar, why don't you try a banjo there? I think the twang would really add a lot to that, the texture of that part. And sure enough, we tried. Sometimes we tried, it wouldn't work. He'd say, all right, at least we tried it. Sometimes we tried, and the song would explode and be like, oh. And you'd hit that sort of utopia in music where you're writing something and you get the part and you're like, yes, that's what I was trying to do. It's like this musical orgasm of trying to understand your creative sort of avenue. Marty is great at just putting you on the avenue and helping you find what it is you're looking for.
Amazing. And I know the album was mixed, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, Alain Johans?
Yeah, Alan, I think.
Alan Johans, and of course, we know him back from that family tree with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, of course, worked with Queens of the Stone Age, and them Crooked Vultures, of course, with Dave Grohl and the great John Paul Jones. Talk about who suggested him to come in the mix and what he brought to the final result.
Marty, and Alan really the way he approached it, he was, first of all, couldn't be a cooler guy. You think of somebody who's worked with those greats and played with those greats, you think he might be a little snooty or it might be a little I'm a little bit above these guys because I work with Dave Grohl and Josh Homme, but he wasn't like that at all. He even wrote us little notes. Hey guys, I just wanted to tell you, I'm really digging the album right now. Little sort of confidence boosters for us to hear from a guy like that. He approached it in a similar way from Marty. As Marty, he would try something, send it to us, and said, guys, I did this on the vocals, I did this on the guitars, I tried to do this in these parts. Tell me what you think. And we were honest with him. We would write back and say, it's good, but it's not quite there. We would like to try to X, Y, and Z. And he was really receptive to everything we were trying to do, which ultimately, with someone who's not in the band, you really look for that in members of the team. And he had that. We've worked with guys that haven't had that, much smaller guys that had much bigger egos that sort of tilt their nose up at, you do your thing and we'll do my thing. He wasn't like that at all. He was totally open to our suggestions and really wanted to help us find that sound that we were looking for. He was great.
And to complete the process. Howie Weinberg, of course, who's done everybody from Metallica to Nirvana, came in to master it. So the whole team is stellar, and to do this, you know, from the heart and, you know, from that indie spirit is an amazing accomplishment. You guys have a great record. Now talk about the road work. I know you guys in the past have played with everybody from, you know, Dimebag Darrell and Damage Plan back in the day to Trivium and Shadows Fall and Nothing Face and Nonpoint and everybody. What has been the highlights so far as your live, you know, performances, and what can we expect coming up?
We've had a bunch of highlights, you know, playing with all the bands that you just mentioned, obvious highlights. I think sometimes the smaller shows can even be highlights, where maybe you're playing in a smaller club that you didn't know you had a fan base, and you know, a couple hundred people pop up. You know, I think coming, you know, in the coming months, we're going to try to knock off a couple of smaller tours, you know, 5 or 6 day stints here and there. You know, some of us are located on the West Coast these days, some on the East Coast, and some in the Midwest. So it's harder for us to get together to tour. But we strategically plan those times out throughout the year, and then hit out and we'll do, like, I think coming up in September, we're going to do Portland, Maine, and New York, and Atlantic City, and then Delaware. You know, stuff like that, where we can visit a bunch of cities, interact and connect with our fans, and then, you know, sort of hit those cities again and make them a little bigger. So it's sort of an ongoing organic process of touring. It's not, for us, it's not typically, you know, go out and hit, you know, a 2-year tour. It's just not what we're capable, you know, what we do right now.
Sure. Well, I am very excited about this new album. And in closing, what other advice do you have to the young musicians today, young creative people that they have music in their soul, and maybe the business side is changing quite rapidly, but you know, what do you tell them as far as really finding their own voice, as far as a songwriter, a musician, and a performer? What do they need to concentrate on?
You know, I think something that I wish I had done a little more of is really immerse yourself in music to the point where, you know, you're creating a career for yourself that isn't just, you know, banking on the big hit single, right? Because increasingly that's much more difficult to get, especially in the rock world. It's much harder to get that. So I would say, you know, try different kinds of music, experiment, take different gigs with different musicians, learn from them, you know, sniff out different avenues, and don't make your one sound and your one thing the only thing you have. It's just like in any career, you want to diversify who you are, what you are, and the kind of art that you're purveying. Because otherwise it's much harder to have that one, hey, we've got a hit. It's much more about sustaining a long career. And in order to do that, you have to be willing to sniff out each of those little avenues, because there's a lot of them. I think that's the big advice. And also, I said it earlier, Jay, stick with, you know, go with your soul with the music. Don't ever write for anybody else besides yourselves. Write what you know, what you're passionate about, because that passion shines through. And if you're trying to do something that someone else has done and you're selling your soul because you think it'll help make big bucks, I think that's an avenue that not very many people will be successful with.
Well, we really appreciate your time. We're very excited about getting the word out on the new album, Delta, not only featuring Live That Lie, but so many other great songs, and highly recommended. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing you guys out live.
All right, Jay. Thanks so much.
You take care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.